How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law, Thomas McCoy, and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Joe.
Oh, that was fantastic. Is that a new microphone that you have there, Mark?
It's not, but if you remember, I normally lean into the microphone, but right now I have to sit absolutely still the entire show.
So, Tom, could you introduce our guest for tonight?
Oh, absolutely. He's the host of the YouTube web series Inside the Business of Acting. He's also an honored faculty member at Emerson College, Los Angeles, and Elon University in Los Angeles. And he's recently published his Entertainment Industry Survival Guide, The New Business of Acting, How to Build a Career in a Changing Landscape, the next edition. Welcome, Los Angeles-based talent manager, educator, and author, Brad Lemack.
Yeah. Welcome, Brad. It's so nice to have you here.
Very excited to be asked. Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity to connect and to chat. Thank you for letting me in.
So we're going to be chatting with Brad Lemack, who is all about theater and management. And I think that, Brad, we need to have full disclosure about this. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about how we met?
It was a dark and stormy night.
Was indeed.
It actually, you get past it. I don't know, one gets past a certain age and dates are meaningless. Like I find myself not wanting to put numbers to things. But having said that, and without owning up to any of it, it was the early 1970s. It was Boston, it was Cambridge, it was WGBH-TV specifically. There was this project happening in Studio A. When they weren't filming The French Chef with Julia Child, they were doing this crazy idea of a kid show that no one ever heard of called Zoom. Right. I don't know why they didn't wait to think maybe someone would do an online video platform with it 100 years later. But so that was happening in Studio A. And meanwhile, in tiny Studio B across the hall, there was a team of high school students from around the greater Boston area at WGBH that had an open casting call. Hundreds of people showed up from high schools, various students, various cities, and they selected a handful to be this team of kids who they would do another kind of experiment with. They had what was really the first use of portable video equipment. And it was there were these huge, we do it now on our phones, but there were this huge batch of equipment. They trained us how to use it. They told us that they thought that we had interesting stories to tell and to uncover from the community. And that at 15, 16 years old, they wanted to see what we would do with a half-hour primetime television show. So we were given this time slot weekly, and we were given this equipment, and we were given a senior, grown-up producer who was mentoring us. And we produced a show for a year, every week, live show. We would take content. We were content creators. Who knew that that's what it would become, right? We went out in the community, and the stories were all as unique as we were. We all had voices coming from wherever we came from. And it was a fascinating experience in just having that platform. And recently, I discovered in a garage cleaning pandemic project about 20 old videotapes. Wow. And I've had them digitized. And I've seen some of them have held up really well. And it's been so extraordinary for me to look at that 1972 Brad Lemack. What happened there? well, I know what happened to him, but what happened to him? So it was a fascinating experience. And you and I sort of bumped into each other in the hall between the two studios one day. And it was like I was meeting somebody I already know.
Right. I felt the same way. It was like a brother that I had some generations before. It was incredible. But it was an incredible show, really a unique show that you guys were doing. You know, our show was we were doing performance stuff and it was all kid-based, but you guys were really doing the production as well.
We were doing everything. We were on air, we were producing, we were writing, we were editing. And in 1972, I was the youngest reporter to cover the Republican National Convention in Miami. It was Nixon's second run to cover that. And I did my reporting for our show. And it was, I mean, think about, I mean, it's politics so different now, really, or maybe not so much, just treated differently. But it was an extraordinary opportunity for a high school kid to get to wander a convention floor and be immersed in all of that. And it certainly, it ignited the flame in me for everything that's happened all these decades later, because it opened my eyes to what I teach and talk about is that I don't have to wait for somebody to give me the opportunity. I have within me the ability to create opportunity on my own and for myself. And that's the greatest joy and the greatest reward. That's how it began.
Yeah, that's how it began. And I was going to ask, so how do you think those early experiences influenced you? Because you've really just moved so far in your career. It's remarkable. Not that it was ever a surprise, remarkable, but...
No. Well, you don't know that where you're headed, right? I mean, it was a difficult teenage high school years for me. I was an odd child from a challenged home and trying to find not so much my value, although maybe it was, but to find my place. And that, those were the arts for me. And in the arts, I found something that I just was comfortable with. And it was a way for me to express myself and to feel validated in a way that I wasn't getting anywhere else. And to be immersed among that group of adult mentors at WGBH and to be surrounded by you and the other kids doing Zoom. We were all doing different kinds of performance art, but we were all like-minded in just the joy of having the platform to move an idea forward. And so I realized all these decades later, my life has really been very much about storytelling. It doesn't matter whether I've been, from that show, I went into broadcast news and public relations and working for Norman Lear and having my management and PR company and teaching. It's all about storytelling and it's all about mentoring, right? And I recognize the value of those services, that kindness that was offered up to me. And I've seen how there's just the residual impact when you just can do something really selfless for somebody else, open a door for them, let them know, I feel that's really good, or give them the boost that they need to move on to the next step. That's really been what, all of this has been about. And then I've had a greater realization of in the COVID pandemic, because, we're all sort of insulated in our bubbles with a lot of time to think and reflect, really. So that's a long answer to a very short question.
I mean, you have spent your career navigating this remarkable field, and now we're in this world of COVID where there is so much, I think, danger, not just from COVID, but to theater, to acting, to performance. I mean, it is, a world in which you're right next to each other. But go ahead, Brad. Where do we go with this?
Where you see danger, I see opportunity.
Wonderful.
We will not have it be what it was. It may be quite some time, if ever again, that we will sit at big amphitheaters and small movie houses and be next to each other and have that shared community experience, right? But the role of the arts has taken on such significance to us. First of all, it's important to recognize that out of challenging times historically have always come great stories, great art, great literature, great music, great poetry, right? And everyone will have a story to tell, but not everyone's a storyteller. So we rely upon those artists among us to be able to use their voice, to find a shared voice for all of us. So that will happen. And so we're not going to big venues, but we are returning to television, for example. You know, we've had decades of television ratings plummet. We've had a period of people, consumers, fleeing broadcast television to pay for streaming subscription services, seeking a better quality entertainment than they've been able to find before, right? So at the same time, do you want to go see a Broadway show and spend $300 a ticket, plus the parking, plus the, you know, do you want to go to the movie house at the mall where it's, I don't know about Marshfield, but down the street in Pasadena, it can be $18 for a ticket, plus to park, plus the $30 for the popcorn, plus. So we're seeing, and the numbers will prove this out eventually, I think they already have, a resurgence. People are rediscovering television. You know, there was not so long ago a conversation among those people about, you know, what will the future of television broadcast be? Will it be sports and political coverage and debates and football games and holiday parades? Because that was sort of the worry. It was leaning in that direction because the worry was that they couldn't compete with what Apple Plus was giving them and Hulu and Netflix, what they were offering up as content options to viewers. And then poof, March comes, and instead of running around all day and trying to be impressed with our busyness, we're at home. And we have to learn how to spend time with each other. And a lot of that time is spent with each other in front of television. And a lot of that time is spent learning how to reconnect. Put this phone away. Stop texting. Send an email. Stop texting. Call somebody and say hello. Connect one-on-one, like we used to do, right? Because we need it. There's a humanity in that digitally can't be replicated. And so, again, it's a bigger, longer answer to a very simple question you asked me. We're not really giving up anything. We're evolving so that we're able to seek and find entertainment that's more customized and specific to our demographic and our interests. That has created a thirst for content and people to create the content. Actors, writers, producers, directors, right? So there's huge opportunity for people to create this stuff, huge. Now, it'll be a little while before the need and the economy and the ability to get paid what you need to be paid for that work will level itself out, but it will. I'm just really excited about where we're headed. I'm also incredibly aware of those who have paid a price for this, through no fault of their own. I have huge empathy for my friends who have lost their jobs and lost their ability to do what they love to do. But it's also been about reinvention and taking that look about, okay, maybe the world has given me a chance to do something else that I really want to do. So I think I'm thinking a lot about all of this these days, and it's always in a bright light.
I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, one of the phrases I came up with early on in the COVID epidemic was adaptation is innovation. And I think, you know, what you're saying is that this applies so much to our world of theater and performance. So I'm very encouraged to hear you have this optimism. Now, how do we apply it? What's going on in school with you guys out there at Emerson, LA?
Yeah, well, nobody's meeting in person, right? We're all doing remote learning, which was frightening in March when we mid-semester stopped having our community in person, and we're thrown into this thing, this platform with all the squares and boxes and all the technology, which, you know, I certainly wasn't adept or proficient or comfortable with even. But again, when you said it, you know, necessity, challenge, it's a zillion teachable moments. It's a learning experience, right? And so the challenge to stay, remain, continue to be relevant is around us all the time, right? Keeps us young, keeps us vital, keeps us interested, keeps us interesting, I hope. So it was a great adaptation for students and teachers. I had great sadness for the fact that they didn't get to have a real graduation. You know, they so really were looking forward to that. But you celebrate in other ways. And I keep reminding my students, yes, I know what we've given up, but we're not going back to that. Right? It's like work. My friends who work at big agencies in big buildings in Beverly Hills where the rents are astronomical are working from home and are being probably more productive because they're more focused and there's less running around trying to see who can have the most lunches in the week. And they're not going to go back to those buildings. We're going to find new ways. We've found new ways to do the work that we want to do. And so again, business, it's not just the entertainment business, it's not just the business of acting. The world has reinvented how do you continue to do what you love to do with a different challenge and yet still fulfill a need that people find interesting. Haven't there been some incredible theater productions being done on YouTube by the Theater Guild and the Actors Fund, you know, who benefit from a lot of these productions? I've seen some incredible stuff. And instead of spending, you know, $50, $100, $300 to sit in a theater with all those people, I get to decide how much do I want to contribute to this organization, because the actors are doing it for free because they want to do what they love and they want to help the organization do what its mission is. So there's great stuff out there.
Yeah, it is a unique time, obviously. I remember early on in this when, I think I might have mentioned this on the Dr. Joe show before, but I think the Metropolitan Opera was doing a benefit, and it was being broadcast live. And there's this conductor conducting his orchestra, you know, but the orchestra is disparate. It's, you know, out of their homes. And it was remarkable the way they were organized and synchronized. But the unique thing was I was looking at the conductor. I'd never been to a concert where I'd seen the conductor's face. I've always seen their back and them moving a baton. This was unique. And this is when I had my epiphany and realized, wow, we have an opportunity here to do theater in a way that has never been done before.
It's extraordinary. And last semester, I had my improv comedy class who were supposed to do a graduate end of semester performance in a theater in Los Angeles here. We did it on Zoom. And the challenge was that my students were everywhere from California to Istanbul, at time zones that made no sense, yet they were all there. And they did a live improv performance that was stunning, maybe more so than it would have been had we all been in the theater in Hollywood. And that was an epiphany for me, going, wow, we can do this in other ways that really maximize the potential of all of this stuff that maybe we didn't realize the potential of before.
It is remarkable. Mark, I'm just wondering, from a legal point of view, have you guys had to do virtual closings and
so, you know, it's fascinating listening to Brad, because what he's talking about is it's industry wide. It is not discriminating in any industry, and everybody's adapting or they're not, right? It seems as though, Brad, just from sitting listening to you, I would probably label you an entrepreneur, a problem solver, that type of person who's ready to adapt. Not everybody's adapting. I imagine there's peers of yours that panicked and weren't able to adapt and see forward. But yes, Dr. Joe, obviously everything has changed. I mean, we can't do face-to-face interactions right now. So the ones that we have to do in Massachusetts, the notary acknowledgement and these closings has to be face-to-face. We're minimizing the contact. So we're utilizing Zoom, which, can't say enough about Zoom 2.0, right? As opposed to the one you guys were talking about. And minimizing the contact to as limited period of time as possible.
It's also raised another interesting point that I think is more universal, and I've been talking about this lately, is introvert versus extrovert.
Yeah.
Right? Because the business of acting is an industry that is perceived by most people to be a business of extroverts, and it's not. And if you're an introverted person in a business that's perceived to be a business for extroverts, and you have to work to do that, it's exhausting. But when you think about what is the challenge for introverts, a lot of it is walking into the room and kind of taking ownership of the space. This has been very empowering to them because you're not walking in anywhere. You're clicking onto a virtual space for an audition, let's say, right? And so it's very powerful. And people I know who are in therapy now are seeing their therapists virtually. And there's an intimacy that happens this way that allows stuff to flow that may take more time to get to or may have difficulty getting to at all in a space when you're actually really feeling the energy of the person in the room with you. So, again, that's part of what I see as what are the lessons we're learning from this. And again, I tap on the shoulder, I feel, which is, there's people really, really suffering. There's a lot of people who are struggling to adapt or who haven't had the luxury to be able to adapt. And, we have to embrace those struggles for them and recognize that we have to do what we can to just kind of make this better for them. And I'm hoping at the end of the day, when all of this is in the rearview mirror, that we will be a kinder people to each other, right? Maybe that'll be the greatest lesson for all of this. It's just the understanding of listening, have a voice, let your voice be heard, and just be grateful.
Dr. Joe, Brad talks about two people being intimate over Zoom. It seems counterintuitive because, we're not connected, but is it because everybody's at their own home, their home space, if there's a leveraged situation, professional client or, interviewee, is it because you feel more comfortable and secure? And so does the other person, which we've never experienced. There's always been some imbalance at a meeting, right?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think having, especially in telepsychiatry, which is what we're doing, the person I feel has been able to open up so much quicker because they're in their nest. They're in their home, their familiar surrounding. And for me as a psychiatrist, it gives me a remarkable opportunity to see their world, not just hear about their world, but to see their world. But what this speaks to is the absolute imperative for connection, that we as human beings must be connected to other people. It's part of who we are as a social animal. And what we're finding is that the distance, the quote virtual component, may not matter. I mean, think about letters. I mean, for years, if you had a long distance romance or were had a pen pal. It was all distant. It was all virtual. You were writing something and expressing yourself, and it would take time for that to get to someone else, and then they would read it, and they would absorb it, and they could read it again and again and again, and then write back to you. So I think that we are rediscovering, if you will, just how important this connection is and how we can do it even if we're apart. One of the things, I say is, social distancing is not the same as emotional distancing. We just want to be close with each other. But I want to get back to the business of acting with this, because in the theater, there is, as we were talking earlier, that remarkable energy that you have when you're sitting in an audience and you're seeing a live performance, somebody right there, and at the end of the performance, you get a chance to give them a round of applause. As a performer, you are adapting your performance to what you're hearing in the audience. You can see, you can feel that energy. That is not accessible now to an actor, a performer. So how do we teach them that? How do we get them to stay with that remarkable energy, even if they're not in the same room? What are you teaching them, Brad?
Yeah, so acting is acting, right? So when you're on a movie set or you're on a television set that isn't a sitcom that's shot before a live audience, you still have to do the work and you still have to deliver the product. One of the things I do in my classes, because my classes are very interactive, is that I ask/insist my students be unmuted for the entire experience, so that if I should say something that might be a little cute or clever, we get to hear the ha-ha or the, there we go again. It's the ability to create that, not sense of community, but to create that real community in that space. So in some venues that works, but for bigger performances, I think you're giving up the audience response orally, live, that you hear, but you're diving deeper into the intimacy, right? So as a stage performer on a virtual platform, you're looking at the camera. You are looking at an audience member. And so you have to remember that, I'm not going to hear them respond in a way that I will recognize, but I'm connecting with them with my eyes. They're looking at me. And so I have an ability to speak to them in a way that they will feel that I'm talking to them. And so I think, maybe give up a little bit of something, but you gain something else in its place. And at the end, it's still an important, fulfilling experience. The dessert tastes just as sweet. It's served to you on a different dish, right? And I think that's great lessons for actors, right? It's the ability to learn how to connect in a way where you're not in a theater space. And it's exactly what my clients do and all actors do when they're on a film set or they're on location. And, it's not about who's watching. It's about, what is happening in the performance space and it's a relationship, right? So now we're having relationships with performers in a way that we didn't before. I think it's resulting in deeper levels of performance and deeper takeaways for an audience. At least the stuff that I've seen performed that way, that would have been theater stuff. It's been just extraordinary. Bryan Cranston and Sally Field did a digital via YouTube production of Love Letters in the spring. I've seen that show 100 times. I had clients perform that show around the country. I know that play, but I didn't know it like this. She was in LA, he was in New York, and there they were split screen on YouTube, and what an extraordinary theater experience it was. So I kind of hold on to that, and I'm seeking more of that, if that's of any help.
Yeah, again, I am so appreciative that you see all the opportunity there. When you're teaching, you're not teaching theater classes, you're teaching the business side of this. So from a business perspective, what tips can you give young actors as they're entering this field? Because, there's often a huge fantasy, I'm coming out of my high school performance or my college performance, and I'm going to just hit Broadway or hit LA. What's different now?
Yeah, well, you may hit it, but I'm not quite sure what the definition of hit might be. Maybe it's just everybody has their own definition. I think that there are two lessons that I want young actors to seek out, absorb, learn, embrace, make your own. History, the lessons of history, and lessons of patience. I'm finding it unsettling that so many young actors don't have any idea of the history of this great industry they want to be in. And I think that you have to really study that in order to appreciate the opportunities that seem to be so easy and available to you now. You ought to know who the great producers, directors, performers were and what made them great, right? And I don't believe in paying dues. I believe in earning opportunity, and that's how you begin. And there is an illness of impatience when many students graduate from college. They think that they are perfectly suited to be and ready to have that career and to hit right away. Here I am, I graduated, I'm ready. Come take me away. But the fact is, those legacy careers are earned and they're built. And working actors, most of the people who work as actors in this industry are not the star names. They're not the names above the title. They're not the zillion-dollar a movie people. They're not. They're like people I represent, like actors represented at companies all over, New York, LA, the big performance centers, who make this business run and who just kind of understand it's not about job to job. While it isn't. It's about the career you're building along the way. And I want to disconnect the search and the idea of fame and the seeking of and securing fame for young actors, because you can't, right? Fame is a byproduct of just being great at what you do and being seen as a result. I don't know how to make somebody famous, although I represent well-known people. It wasn't anything any of us did. It was the work itself, an opportunity that the spotlight ended up coming to them. So I think the idea that I can hit big, I can hit right away, I can make a lot of money right away, are the important lessons that I want young actors to embrace, right? And I want them to recognize that it is work, it's a job, right? And the reason I see most young actors give up is they see that it's work and they're not willing to do the work. I'm willing to help them do the work. You just got to do a little bit more than me, right? It's not going to happen on its own. So again, it's a simple question with a complicated answer that maybe you whittle it down to say, take a deep breath, know the industry that you want to be in, right? You would never go into the shoe business, shoe, not show, without understanding how shoes are manufactured, right? So I think knowledge is so important. And then you have an appreciation for what you get to do. You get to stand in a studio and look around and go, wow, who's been here before?
But one of my other phrases is, I've worked hard to be this lucky. And I think that's what you're talking about. It doesn't just happen. It is hard work. And then it just looks like you're just so lucky. But
you know what? Yeah. And you know what? It's not that it's hard work. Because if you're doing work you love, it's not hard. You want more and more and more of it. What it is you just have to be willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody else may say, wow, that is hard. Right. You love it, right? It's not hard.
I couldn't agree more. I keep coming back to the phrases, but one of my phrases, success for me and not for everybody, but success for me is when you love going to work and love going home. And I have been blessed with that. I love going to work. Now I get to do it from home. So it's like even better. I mean, who could imagine that would happen? I have the best commute ever. But Tom, you want to come back on and ask Brad a few more of those things? Fascinating idea.
Sure. What skills do you think people should learn now in the age of COVID and going forward? Like, I read the review copy of your book, and you go a lot into self-tape auditions.
Yes.
So what should the new standards be for what makes a good self-tape audition instead of an audition in general? Because you have to combine a little bit of technical skill too. You got to figure in lighting and sound, and
you have to combine a huge amount of technical skill, which you are now required to really learn and know how to implement. I mean, it's what I call the Hollywood hyphenate, right? So you have to be good at, excuse my voice, you have to be good at lots of stuff. You can't just be great at the acting piece of it. You have to be actor, editor, writer, lighting person, sound person. You have to be adept at doing all of these things, because the truth is that the in-room audition, particularly for the first audition, I don't think we're ever going to see that again. And so among my first lessons to actors about this process, because the first is self-tape, and then on a callback, you're usually on a virtual live audition that's that gets you in the room on the Zoom screen, is I remind them, these are the lessons that harken back for me to the early 70s when I began my career in live television, is that this is broadcast. This is like live television broadcasting when you're on a platform like this. And you have to be cognizant of where are you, how are you appearing, how do you sound, how do you look, your focus, right? Just because you are not speaking or someone else is speaking, you better know where you're looking, and you better look like you're interested all the time, right? That's really important. But at the end of the day, your ability to be able to record with either your phone or on your laptop, your audition is critical. So one of the great skills out of COVID for this is that if you are auditioning and putting it on tape, the person who's reading with you can't be in the room with you. And that's been a challenge. So I have encouraged actors to make copies of the sides of their scripts, email them to a friend, get the friend on the speakerphone on your iPhone or your Android, put it down near your camera, and let them read to you with it being on speakerphone. So it gives you some give and take, right? And you're keeping completely safe in all of that. And it is a new world, right? It started before COVID, and it's going to continue to excel. Here's the good news about all of that, and I need to say this, is that before all of this, a casting director could maybe see 10 to 15 actors in their office in an hour. Now they're seeing 50 or 60 via self-tape. So for those of us who represent talent, we're seeing that net has been cast so much wider. I see it in my office, that clients who normally wouldn't make the cut for an audition for a certain role because of whatever are now getting those opportunities, and in some cases booking those roles, because the casting director has the luxury of seeing more people. They have the comfort of the space they are in. They're not traffic cops bringing actors in or out. It's been a really great time for actors to be seen, and for more actors to be seen more often. So there's a lot of answers in there to your question, but it's work. That's the whole thing. That's the conversation about doing the work. That's part of it. Acting is a teeny % of the job that you will do when you're a professional actor, or you're wanting to be a professional actor.
There's a lot of like you said, hyphens. And I think that it's a good thing. You need to be curious. In entertainment, the worst thing that you can have is a lack of curiosity, especially if you're a writer, and especially if you're an actor, because without curiosity, you have no empathy.
Yeah.
How do you build a character if you can't identify with another person?
Well, that's true. And that's why, as you get older as an actor, you become a better actor, because living life, you add color to the play-by-play of facts. It's not just about, how old are you? How tall are you? What do you do for a living as the character you're playing? The more you live and the more experience you have, you're able to understand the nuances and bring those to any character, even if it's a character who's in a supermarket going, do you want paper or plastic? I know I don't care what the role is. What I care is that you have the ability to create the essence of a character. It doesn't matter that we're seeing that character on screen for this amount. The character had a life before. He or she will go on to have a life after. And it's about understanding. That's acting. That's really acting.
Yeah, it's being a character, not a caricature. Really, those decisions. This does get into the last few minutes of the show. We have the Dr. Joe Show is based on the I am approach. The idea that we're always doing the best we can at every moment in time, our current maximum potential, with the potential to change in the very next second. And because we're influenced by 4 domains, your home domain, the social domain, the biological domain of your brain and body, and what I call the I see. How do I see myself? How do I think other people see me? We have these 4 domains. Because they connect, small changes can have big effects. You don't need to change everything. We've had a small change, COVID, with huge effects. So Brad, I ask all my guests this towards the end of the show. What small change can you recommend to our listeners so that they can perhaps use your business of acting, maybe even in their everyday life?
Listen to each other. When you ask someone, how are you? Listen for the answer. But listen, because I think that we have had an epidemic of disconnect in our world, right? That's the result of this.
Yeah.
And I see this time as an opportunity to put away the electronics and reconnect or connect for the first time with people you haven't ever or in a long time. And that can be your spouse, your partner, your best friends, your kids, your relatives. Because I think, at the end of the day, aren't we recognizing that we all want to be heard? We all want to be recognized, and not for great things, but just for who we are, just that we're here.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. We all want the same thing, which is just to feel valued by somebody else. And at every moment, we can remind someone of their value. And whenever you do that, you increase your own value, which gets to the second rule and truth of the I am. Everyone's got an I am. Everyone is interested in what you think or feel about them. And because you're part of someone's home or social domain, this means you control no one, but you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Brad Lemack, author of Business of Acting. What kind of influence do you want to be?
I want to be an influence of positivity, of forward thinking, forward moving, lessons learned from what happened before, but not ever lingering in the rearview mirror. We always have the ability to achieve something new that we're benefiting from stuff we've learned before. So I think bigger picture, for me, I hope that I can help move that forward.
And through this book, Business of Acting, you have influenced so many people. How do they get the book? Real quick.
You can go to my website, which is thebusinessofacting.com. It'll take you anywhere.
Businessofacting.com. Folks, it's been a great show. Brad, it's so wonderful to see you again, my brother.
Thank you so much. I've loved this opportunity to chat with you and to be. Thank you, and stay safe.
Wonderful, wonderful, folks. We'll see you back here at the Dr. Joe Show next week. Ben, you take care, and Timmy, always good to see you. All right.
Thank you, Brad Lemack.
Thanks, Brad. Bye, everyone.
Marilyn Monroe swallowed the pill. Did she do it for love or was she tired of the thrill?